Well, hi everybody. My name is Jim Burns, and right now you're in the Bullyproof Classroom, and you're about to take a conference and participate in a conference called the School Climate Conference. It is a way to help you as a teacher, and if a school is viewing this as a school, help to develop a calmer, safer, more respectful, and more responsible classroom and school climate. Uh, that's my organization. We are James H. Burns Associates. Here's some contact information for you if you'd like to either email me, or if you'd like to take a look at either the Bullyproof Classroom Academy, or just get some information about the Bullyproof Classroom. You can go to either one of those websites. Now, I also would encourage you, and you're going to get an opportunity at the end, to download the Bullyproof Classroom app, which has a wealth of information on it that you will find extremely useful as you move forward. There's articles, videos, there's podcasts. I mean, just anything that you could possibly want to help deal with bullying, relationships, respect, and responsibility in your school. So, sit back, enjoy this. I'm going to see if I can run through it and give you as much information as we can in the next few hours. First of all, I want us to understand one thing. We don't have to be Einstein to figure this out. There is a acronym called KISS, and KISS merely means keep it simple, stupid. That's what it means. And I try to keep everything as simple as I can, strictly because I'm a simple kind of a guy. And when I understand something, it becomes easier for me to work on it, or put it in place, or be consistent in my efforts with any program that I have going on in the school. So the simpler something is, the easier it's going to be to implement, and the easier it's going to be consistent in trying to make sure that you continue to do it day after day and week after week. The next thing we want to understand are two things. If you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it well enough. I'm going to try and make sure that you understand exactly what I'd like you to do. And we can't solve this problem at the same level of thinking we were at when the problem was created. In other words, this problem started probably 40 years ago. If you go to my website, you'll be able to take a look at a couple of articles there. One of them is called 40 Years of Small Compromises. We have compromised over the years, and we have allowed levels of disrespect to sneak in and leak into our schools that are just beyond belief. And this problem began with very, very small compromises. It's the little foxes spoil the vine. Little tiny foxes that sneak in, you can't see them, but they're chewing away at the grapevine. They're destroying the fruit of the vine, and that's what's happening here. The little problems that we had years ago with a kid being a little bit smart or uppity or giving us a little bit of a hard time, left uncreated, by default kids believe that they can do that, and that we almost agree with their behavior. So we have to work on this stuff at a much higher level. Sometimes even the consequences that we use don't work anymore, and we have to use stronger, more effective consequences to help change behavior. Now, the other thing that I would like us to understand, and I think it's critical for us to understand it, is this. Number one, we have to know who is in front of us. Kids today suffer from a lot of neglect. They are kids who are left to themselves. Parents believe that, the way that they deal with the kid is through anger. Parents set their boundaries in anger. And through all of it, we have kids coming into us who truly do have post-traumatic stress disorder. And that post-traumatic stress, see, we used to associate post-traumatic stress disorder with war. I can remember George Carlin years ago, he used to say, first we have you're shell-shocked, then you have battle fatigue, then there's something else that comes along, and then now we have PTSD. And kids who have this don't even know they have it. All they know is they're angry, they are confused, they kind of wonder where they came from, they have difficulty with right and wrong, for sure, they are absolutely very negative, they have low self-esteem. And you know, being raised in an environment where your boundaries are set in anger, you really don't have a clear idea of right and wrong behaviors. It's very difficult to try and comprehend. And so kids come to school, they don't even know that they're doing some things wrong. And I mean at 5 years old. 5 years old, they'll come to school and they don't understand, you know, right and wrong behaviors, and they have to be taught. And they have to be taught with the imposition of the right consequences at the right time, and it has to be done with love and understanding and rules and regulations. Not necessarily in that order, more rules and regulations, and I would say compassion and understanding. So we've got to be aware of who is in front of us, and we have to be aware of the level that they're at and where they're going. Because if we're going to improve school climate, we have to improve the kids and make sure that they are moving forward in a way where they're respectful and they're responsible. So those two things are important, and we have to understand who's in front of us. That's critical. Now, is it really about school climate? Or is it about family climate? For sure. What I just discussed with you, family climate, that's important. Number two, societal climate. What's happening in society is important. Number three, community climate. What's happening in your community? There may be trouble brewing within your school that's part of the community. State climate, nationwide climate, worldwide climate. And in this world today, we have a host of different problems. We have a lot of difficulty that's occurring right now. And I think we're all aware of it. We're all very aware of the things that are going on in the news today. And it's frightening. And sometimes this level of bullying has gotten to the point where it's mass bullying. It's happening on a very, very grand scale where a lot of people are being affected by things that are happening in the world today. And I want us to be completely aware of that as we move forward. And I also want us to be aware of this other small piece, and that's this. When you watch the news at night, as teachers, and you can communicate this to parents, please understand that what you're watching and the commentary that you're hearing is usually through the cable outlets like Fox, CNN, or MSNBC. And they have their own opinion about everything, and they like to say they're fair and balanced. The bottom line is, don't start talking about worldwide issues if, in fact, your kids are within earshot, because they're going to develop an opinion about different races, creeds, colors, religions, and so on. And they're going to go to school, but the problem is going to be is they're going to be sitting next to people with those different races and religions and creeds and colors and so on. and you don't want them to be shooting their mouth off in school about someone else's differences, because it's just going to get them in trouble. And who knows, they could turn out to be the bully that's going to pick on someone of a different religion or a different race or color. So just use your head and make sure you, when you discuss worldwide issues, you do this, okay, with someone, your spouse or whoever it might be, in a spot where your kids can't hear you. Okay, now, as we move forward, with the understanding that we have to be aware of these issues. Things are happening within families, they're happening within a society, they're happening within our community. Schools are in communities, and difficulties occur in communities that get brought into schools. They're happening within our state. They're happening within our nation and the world. And I've discussed with you the things that are happening within the world, and I want us to be aware of who we discuss these issues with as we move forward. We don't want to discuss them in front of our kids yet. They will develop their own attitudes and opinions on their own, and we want them to be able to not bring in any negative attitudes that get discussed in the home about other folks who are in the world. Okay, now, let's take a look at what it could be about. Is it about our own personal climate? You ever have a bad day, and within that bad day you end up coming to school with such an attitude that you take it out on the kids, and all the kids do is mirror back to you the way you feel? I once said to one of my administrators years ago, I said, I'm in a rotten mood today. And his comment to me was, be aware of it. You gotta be aware when you're having a bad day or a bad time. Do we know how to create our own weather? In other words, do we make decisions about what our attitude is going to be like well before we end up having a bad time of it? Do we know what we're going to do when we're in a traffic jam? Do we know what we're going to do when someone is disrespectful to us, rude to us? Do we know how to handle things when we get slighted? Can we manage difficult situations without and keep a consistent personality and a consistent attitude? And can we teach our students to create their own sunny days? Hey, look, it is not easy to, maintain a really good attitude when things are going wrong around us. Difficulty at home, difficulty in school, car breaks down, had a fight with your spouse, kids are out of control. Any number of things can go wrong. Your administrator's giving you a hard time. There's too much pressure based on testing. I mean, the list can go on, and you can add to it any way you like. But we have to create our own personal climate. The change in the world starts with us. The change in a school starts with us individually. And we have to make those changes on our own. And the more we change, the more our attitude changes, the more things change around us. When we change, our world changes, and that's something that we completely have to be aware of. The brain research tells us that the social and emotional window of the brain closes around 4 or 5 years of age. And our imprint starts to form based upon decisions that get made, based upon some of these conclusions, true or false, and they happened well before kindergarten. So the social and emotional window closes, and we have our imprint. That's how we're put together, based upon what went on with us. Now, we are just a compilation of what people have said to us and what people have done to us. And some of the trouble that we had when we were younger that was not dealt with, which were youth conflicts, they became an adult conflict as we grew older. And I think that's important to know. That's very important to know. Now, what we have to be aware of is that we, as individuals, as adults, and it happens to young kids as well, receive information from our parents or have received it. In other words, you're not that good at math. You have, why are you so dumb? You're klutzy. You're clumsy. And things get said to us and things get done to us, like setting boundaries in anger and things of that nature, where we lived in an angry environment where our parents were always yelling at us. Our parents were almost disrespectful to us. All of that gets sealed in behind that window at the age of 5 or 4 or 5. And the window closes. And the conclusions that we've drawn stay there as seeds when we're little. And that with that window closed in front of it, and those seeds back there growing, by the time we hit adulthood, those seeds become redwood trees, and often our life can become unmanageable because of it. And these are the parents. It could be happening to us. I know full well a lot of this stuff happened to me. But these are the parents that are raising the kids that we have in our schools right now. So if you've asked me, who do we work with, parents or children? At a young age, we should be working with young parents to help them discipline their kids, help them understand that there's only a few behaviors that we have to work with and that they have to work with in the home. And we have to teach them how not to set boundaries in anger. And we have to help them develop a value system that they can teach their children going forward, so that kids come into school with the right attitude. Because if they were raised in an environment where they had nothing but youth conflict between them and their parents, they're going to end up having a whole lot of trouble understanding how to raise their own children. And we have to be aware of that. And we have to work with parents right now as much as we have to work with kids. And we have to be aware of anything that's kicking around inside of us that is keeping us from doing it. This is critical to understand. We are a compilation of what was said to us and what was done to us. And we have to realize that we take those same attitudes into the classroom. And we have to realize that parents have those same attitudes that they have been carrying around with them, that they bring into school, and those are the attitudes that they use when they argue with us, when they try to intimidate us, when they try to bully us. And it's important to understand this piece, because if we don't understand it, what will start to happen is we will become defensive. We will become fearful. We'll have trouble dealing with those parents. And those parents need our instruction, and they need it desperately. They may have post-traumatic stress disorder. So, understand, we have a responsibility to those parents as much as we do to the kids. Okay, now let's take a look at some more information here. So where do we start? Where do we start? It truly does start in the home. No question. But I'm not going to take this big hit. I'm not, here's the problem. Things start in the home, but we have to determine what we really want in our school and in our classroom. in terms of stopping bullying, stopping behavior that's out of control, developing respect, improving attitudes. And we have to be sure that what we're going to make a decision to do, we do it every single day. Now, does it start in the home? Of course it does. Of course it does. But the schools take a tremendous hit because everything that goes wrong, look, something could happen in a community, and it could involve a kid. And the first person that they go talk to the kid's guidance counselor. Whether or not he graduated from school or not, they go talk to the kid's guidance counselor. What are you talking to them for? Talk to the parents. Talk to somebody. Now, the school has formed their opinion of the kid for sure, but the bottom line is the school is not responsible completely for who this kid has become. There's a whole lot of people involved with helping this kid form into and develop the personality that he has. So, before we get too carried away, yes, it starts in the home. The school has to be a participant in developing school climate because what's coming in from the outside, the types of attitudes and behaviors that are coming in from the outside, are what's affecting the climate in the school for sure. I was watching Neil Cavuto on Fox News going back, I don't know, 3 or 4 Christmases ago. Actually, it wasn't Christmas, it was Thanksgiving. And Neil Cavuto was interviewing Jack LaLanne. You know, the 60s celebrity who was involved with, he was one of our first exercise gurus who basically worked with women through a TV show. And they asked Jack, what are we going to do about the problem of teenage obesity? And Jack said, well, the first thing we have to do is get all the junk out of the schools. And my comment was, excuse me, Jack. Of course he didn't hear me. It's not my fault that these kids are overweight. We don't bring kids into school and feed them bad food. It's based upon choices that they make. We try to provide healthy food, but they'll choose to eat what they want to eat outside of school. So the problem with, weight is completely related to a personal choice that gets made in the home and as kids get older by the kid. So yes, the school is responsible for providing healthy food, but kids are responsible for the choices that they make. And I want us to understand that because we have taken some pretty bad hits over the years. Everything's the school's fault. It's not our fault. Kids aren't doing well on the test. Well, of course, we have to teach the kids, but kids, just because we teach somebody doesn't mean they learn. The other thing is kids have choices with what they eat, have choices with their attitude, have choices with their behavior. We are there as an adjunct, but ultimately, much of this stuff has to start with the home. And kids who are, 5 years old and coming to school and who are rude, disrespectful, discourteous already that is not the school's problem. That's a problem that started in the home, and now we're expected to correct it. And I understand they see us as experts, but guess what? Some of this stuff has to be done by mom and dad. If, in fact, mom and dad even exist at that point. They may be working a lot. They may be in divorce situations. The kid may be shuffled from pillar to post. That's where we have to understand who's in front of us. But we also have to understand what everybody's responsibility is, and they shouldn't be pointing the finger directly at the teachers or the school, because that just does nothing but put blame at times where it doesn't belong. Okay, now, let's take a look at what we got to do. What is school climate? Now, this is a list of things that you can write down and you can take with you. All members of the school community feel safe. Principles of equity and inclusive education are embedded in the learning environment. The school climate is a crucial component of the prevention of inappropriate behavior. The principal effectively guides the direction of the school. The physical appearance of the building is really neat and clean. And that's something that people don't even look at. I've walked through schools that have absolutely been filthy. And that does not reflect a positive school climate. And we have some more stuff here. We share resources. We're caring and sensitive. We have a good relationship with the kids where respect is mutual. And there's a high level of caring and trust. And, you know, there's just this feeling that where respect, responsibility, and a good attitude just ooze. And there's the link that this information came from. So you could take a look at that, and I think that'll help you in terms of developing and working on a better school climate. Now you have this PowerPoint, you have this entire presentation, so you can take anything that you want out of here, and you're going to see some links later on at the end that you're going to be able to use. So, based upon that information, based upon what we have right now, what I've been able to conclude is this. Number one, a positive school climate has 4 key components. Number one, it's respectful. And I'm going to give you the definition of respect in a minute, but respect is present in the classroom. Number 2, and in the school, it's responsible. You do what you're supposed to do. Number 3, and this is a biggie, the students are compliant. They are compliant. And let me just touch on compliance for a minute. Compliance is, and you're going to see the definition in a minute, doing what you're told when you're told to do it with a good attitude. And this is where me and some of the other behavioral gurus kind of split. We don't agree on this. Some folks will say, you ask kid to do something, wait 10 seconds, see if he does it. My feeling is you do what you're told when you're told to do it with a good attitude. That's compliance. And kids don't do that. Do they? You ask them to do something, they go, all right, wait a minute, I'll be right there. And a lot of that comes from yelling from room to room, and so on in homes, not addressing issues quickly enough, making sure that, that we recognize when non-compliance exists and imposing a consequence and setting our boundaries and all of that. But the bottom line is this. Compliance is doing what you're told when you're told to do it with a good attitude. And that's very important to know. Now, and there's one last piece. The teachers, students, and administrators feel emotionally safe. The teachers, students, and administrators feel emotionally safe. Administrators are people too. And administrators have to understand their own imprint. I mean, sometimes administrators have fears as well. Fear of being yelled at, fear of confronting a parent, fear of a big disagreement, fear of a teacher giving them a hard time, fear of his own superintendent, fear of the kids, fear of the community. All of this has to be taken into account by administrators, not just teachers. Because if administrators have a fearful attitude, what's going to happen? It's going to leak down through the school. In other words, if I don't discipline kids because of my concern about a parent, well, that kid's going to gain control of the school and affect the school climate. So dealing administratively with kids is as important, if not more important, than what the teacher does in the classroom. Because once that leadership starts to fold up their tent and lets kids get away with a lot of different things that they shouldn't be getting away with, it becomes more and more difficult to be able to get a hold of that climate and change it for good. So, administration, make sure that you understand your own imprint as well. Okay, so then what should our goals be? What should we be working on? Number one, we have to teach respect. Number two, we have to encourage responsibility. And number three, we have to correct non-compliance. Now, I'm going to go over all three of these, but if you take a look at this, you can understand why I'm saying let's keep it simple, stupid. Let's keep this all simple. Respect, responsibility, compliance. What else is there? Respect deals with people. Responsibility deals with the task or things. Compliance is generic to society, even though sometimes we don't want to admit it. And we have to ensure that everyone feels safe. Our students, our teachers, and administrators. Here's some definitions for you. Respect, having a high regard for the rights and privileges of another person. Responsibility, having the ability to follow through on a task or a job. And then compliance, what I already shared with you, doing what you're told when you're told to do it with a good attitude. Let me just touch on that again. Doing what you're told to do when you're told to do it with a good attitude. Attitude is everything, and we need to be aware of it. Attitude is everything. Now, how can we teach respect? Number one, keep promises. Sounds easy, right? It's not. And you know, these are things you need to tell parents as well. What is a promise? Kids believe that a promise gets made when I say maybe, or when you say maybe. Because maybe to them is yes, maybe to me is no. We have to make sure that we evaluate our entire schedule. I know lots of times I've given a detention to kids and I forgot and left, and they showed up for the detention and I wasn't there, which did not bode well for my consistency. And the importance that I put on showing up for the detention. Be sincere and honest. And let's talk about the truth for a minute. Are we truthful with kids? I'm going to ask that question again. Are we truthful with kids? How did I do on that test, Mr. Burns? Well, you could take it over again. It's not a big deal. We'll work on it. You failed. That's what happened. You failed the test. What do you want me to tell you? But see, we can't say that anymore, because we'll get ourselves in trouble. But somewhere down the road, someone is going to tell them that they failed the test. And that's where we've fallen short. It's critical to let kids know what their behavior is like, and what their ability is scholastically, and how well they're achieving. Because if we don't, someone else will tell them down the road. And we have to be the ones that are truthful. That old Jack. And if you go to the Bullyproof Classroom Academy, you're going to find an entire 1-hour module on can you handle the truth. It's something that is lacking today, and kids are told, oh, you're doing okay, when really you're not. Or they come back from suspensions and we fall all over them after the suspension when they're good for a day or two. And that's not good either, because the pressure starts to build in that kid, because now you have established an expectation, or we should expect them to do well, but this kid looks at things and says, I can't do this all the time. And it's important to understand that we need to be truthful with the kids and make them aware of what their scholastic abilities are and what their behavioral and what their conduct is like that is causing so much trouble within the school. So be honest with them. Be as honest as you can with the students. Speak the truth in love. Make sure that they get it. Because if you don't, somebody else is going to do it down the road, and there's going to be trouble for that kid. Say hello to everybody. Why should you say hello to everybody? Because you never know when some kid is going to be in your class and you've already said hello to the parent. In the office one day, just walking by, hi, how you doing? And you've already begun to work on that relationship between you and that parent, and you didn't even know it. Your friendliness, your attitude will shine through, and it will help you down the road just by saying hello. There was a video that was sent to me going back a while. It was sent to me by my cousin about a kid who had difficulty in a school after his dad died. Excuse me. And what happened was his mother and him moved to another community. And in his head, what he said to himself was, I just want to be different. So what did he do? He started just holding doors open for people and saying hello and smiling. And he did this for about 2 years. And everybody fell in love with this kid. He got an award at the end of the year. He got an award for what he did at the end of the year. At the end of his high school career, I take that back. He just wanted to be different. The small things, the big things are the little things. So just do the little things and work on saying hello and teach your kids to do it as well. Call by name. Don't get trapped in the situation where you're using a kid's nickname, because you're not even sure if the kid likes the name. When I was in school in the 6th grade, they hung the nickname on me, Bo, B-O. My parents called me Bo, my friends, coaches, teachers. I was raised over a bar, all the customers, the whole bit. I couldn't stand the name. They did it very lovingly, and they weren't picking on me, and they weren't being, rude to me. But I really didn't like it, and I didn't have the heart to tell them. And when I got to college, what I finally decided was my name's Jim. And that's the name that stuck. The point is, use the kid's first name, unless of course he tells you not to. And I think if you want an example, all you have to do is ask yourself, what was Beaver Cleaver's first name? His actual name. I don't know why anyone would name a kid Beaver for openers, but his real name was Theodore, and that's what his teacher called him. We have to understand affection. I understand, and we are in a hugging society. There's no question. People want to hug all the time. But a high five, a slap on the back, don't put yourself in any bad positions, and certainly no compromising situations. But the bottom line is, do what you got to do, in terms of making a kid feel welcome. Pat on the back, high five, that does it. I mean, I used to walk around the cafeteria, and I used to just give kids a pat on the back or put my hand on their shoulder. I had a doctor one time who I was very good friends with. He would leave the room, and he was a much older gent. He'd leave the room, and every time he left the room, he'd put his hand on my shoulder. I felt like $1 million, and sometimes that works. Put your hand on someone's shoulder, say, hey, how you doing? Pat them on the back. Nothing wrong with it. Again, the little courtesies, the small stuff is the big stuff. I follow baseball, and lots of times they talk about the positioning of a hand when you make a throw, or where your finger is on that curveball, or if you bring your hands up higher on the bat, or you bring the bat back further when you're hitting, or or when you saw the pitch coming, you moved you moved 1 foot over into the hole, and you made these little adjustments. And sometimes the small stuff is the big stuff, and that's what we have to be aware of. You got to be aware of what affects others and what bothers others. Recognize efforts and realize that any effort, no matter how big or how small, will always be rewarded. It will be rewarded. So you have to encourage kids to put in effort, especially with some of our kids that are somewhat disaffected or who have difficulty. Effort is important. It's critical. Just the idea that they try could be enough, and we have to make sure that we recognize the effort that they put in. Now, encouraging responsibility. First thing, be proactive, not reactive. Understand what your responsibility, and this is what you're teaching the kids, what your responsibilities are, and do them. Because sometimes, if we understand what we have to do, it's like saving money. You know you got to save money. You know you're saving money. So you got to put a few dollars away for a rainy day. That's being proactive. Reactive is you go out and borrow money because you don't have it when the hot water heater breaks. Make students aware of how their behavior affects others. I once said to a youngster, I says, does your dad work? And he said to me, yeah. And I says, how would you like it if I went to his place of business and kept him from doing his job? And he said to me, I wouldn't like it. And I says, well, I got news for you. That's what you're doing to me right now. And he got it. Balance rules and regulations with compassion and understanding. This is important. Why is this so important? Kids have a responsibility to behave in your classroom. There's no question about that. Now, when kids misbehave, I hate to say this, but we talk too much. What's wrong today? You don't seem to be feeling well. You're not yourself. And so on. You go through this whole big conversation with this kid. And then you end up imposing a consequence, and what happens? The kid reacts to the consequence. And then where do you go? You just got through speaking with him for 10 minutes. What you have to do is you have to impose the consequence first. Make the student aware of the rules. Then you can start asking questions, and you can show compassion toward the youngster for anything that may be going on that may be causing him to act or behave in a certain way. Rules and regulations, compassion and understanding. There could be plenty of reasons why somebody does something, but there are no excuses, and the consequences still fit. So you have to make sure that kids are aware of that. Assume nothing, teach everything. Don't assume that they know how to walk in a straight line, how to get books off a shelf, how to organize their desk, how to raise their... You have to have a list of expectations ready at the beginning of the school year. And if you take a look at the new 3 R's in education, I list for you there. And it comes from Kay Burke, who put together this list of expectations and procedures for a classroom that everyone should have. So don't assume that kids know. Teach everything to them. Make a plan. How am I going to get to where I need to go? Kids change classes all the time at the high school level. They know what route they have to take. Well, what route does someone have to take in order to get to medical school? What route does someone have to take, at a very low level in order to be able to just color in the lines in kindergarten? What's the plan? How do you do it? work with the children, work with these young adults, help them understand what their responsibility is to stay inside the lines when they're using crayons, and to stay inside the school when they're at the high school level, because they're not allowed to go out into the parking lot during the school day. Help them understand all of this. All of it. And I'm rest assured that kids will start to get the idea of what respect looks like, and they'll also get the idea what it looks like to be responsible human beings. Okay, now let's start taking a look at this whole idea of compliance. Remember, there's three things that we have to be able to work on in a school if we're going to develop a positive school climate. Remember? Now there's a three-step process to be able to teach compliance to students. 3 steps. Okay? Number 1, you have to give instruction. You have to instruct kids and make them aware of exactly what your expectations are. Now, if in fact they don't comply, you allow for one warning. You allow for a warning. The warning is not a prelude to punishment. The warning is merely an opportunity to determine if in fact your instructions were clear. And if in fact this youngster does not comply with your wishes after the warning, you can determine that what was happening was something that I call continued willful disobedience. They did it on purpose, because you gave them the instruction, you gave them the warning, and they still didn't do it. So now you have to impose a consequence. That's where the correction comes in. And if you don't impose a consequence, by default that youngster will believe that his behavior was okay. And that's very simple to do. Instruction, warning, correction. Now where we lose it is when we do instruction, warning, 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 warning. That doesn't work. That doesn't, because then the kid will wait to see when they have finally gotten on your last nerve. Okay, then they'll do what you want them to do. But if in fact you just give instruction, warning, and then the correction, you're going to discover that their behavior will change. It's not going to change overnight, but it's going to change, and that's important. That's very important for us to understand. So we're going to use the instruction, warning, and correction process when we go to try and change the behavior of a youngster, and when we are making them aware that their behavior was unacceptable. Instruction, warning, correction. Okay, that's not too hard to do. Okay, 3-step process. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about feeling safe. How can you make sure that everyone feels safe in your school? Now, I'm going to throw up here, this overlay is going to be my crude depiction of the brain. And if you look at the brain, you notice that it has 3 layers. You have the brain stem, you have the limbic system, which is your mind and emotions, and right in the middle of the limbic system sits something that's called the amygdala, which is the emotional filter for the brain. The brain will always try and determine where information came from. And if it came from a source that the brain does not respect, it's not going to listen. The person will not listen if in fact the source was somebody that they did not respect. Then you have higher order thinking skills, and your amygdala will determine that. Your amygdala will say, hey, where did this information come from? Oh, Burns, well, he's a jerk. And your brain will make the decision, and it will feel the stress that's related to the fact that I was the one that provided the information. And I will tell you something. There are kids that you have trouble with in school. The idea, I like you but don't like your behavior, I don't think that really washes, because there are kids that, you actually hope that they take a day off once in a while because you have so much trouble with them and you need a break from them. And it's very difficult to like somebody and not like their behavior. I like you, but I don't like your behavior. That doesn't fit. You are your behavior. That kid owns his behavior. And the only reason I'm sharing this is I want people to come clean with that. Because your attitude will determine how that kid behaves. That kid knows if you don't like him, and he knows if you like him. You just have to look at him wrong, slump your shoulders. I know when kids were absent from school, and there were kids that I had difficulty with, I had all I could do not to jump up and down and say yippee. But when they came in late, just in time for my class, my whole attitude changed, because I knew that they affected my class in a negative way. So come clean with that, folks. It's important. Now, all incoming information has to pass through the emotions in order to get to the neocortex, which is where you do your higher order thinking. Anytime the brain is placed under stress, it downshifts, goes into the stem, which is where the brain goes for survival. The stem is where you have your respiration, heart rate, your adrenaline flow, and so on. Now, there's only two ways that a person survives. They survive by either running away or by standing there and fighting. Fight or flight. Those are the two ways that they run away. Kids who run away need to develop responsibility. Kids that stand there and argue with you and engage you in a power struggle, what they need to do is they need to develop respect. Fight or flight. Anytime the brain is placed under stress, it downshifts and goes into the stem. The most important thing to understand at this point is if you're the one that caused the stress, your name goes on one of those bricks in the wall. And your amygdala then identifies it as a stressor, and then when you give instruction, all the information comes in, hits that brick, and ricochets right down into the stem. Now, what we have to do is recognize this as a problem, and we have to speak to this youngster. We have to determine if they're engaging us in power struggles, if in fact they come in and they put their head on the desk and do nothing. We have to work with them. We have to determine if we are a contributing factor in this, and we have to do our best to improve our attitude toward this student. That's why it's so important to determine, I like you but don't like your behavior. If you're thinking that, what you have to realize is the kid's picking up on it. And we want this youngster to feel safe. Kids feel unsafe in a classroom when you end up engaging in a power struggle with another kid. I mean, the kids may laugh, but what I will share with you is this. They will, without a doubt, be fearful because they don't want you to lose that struggle. No question about it. So be aware of when you're getting ready to have power struggles with kids. Be aware of how you're going to handle kids that are disrespectful. Be aware of how you're going to handle kids who are irresponsible. Just be cautious on how you confront these issues. Be aware that kids who are irresponsible and who are usually in the flight mode and cutting class, they may have issues, mental health issues that have to be looked at. Be aware that kids who are disrespectful, they may have issues related to violence or have come from a violent background. So just understand all of this, because we need our kids to feel safe. And if kids feel as if that they're in an unsafe environment. They're going to live in their brain stem and no learning's taking place. We're trying to get kids to pass a test all the time. State mandated test. We want kids to pass it, but nobody does well if they feel unsafe. And that's critical to understand. Okay? Make sure you feel as if you can make kids develop a comfort level in your class where they're going to learn. Now, here are 12 strategies that you can use to help really, these are 12 tips that you can use to really sock it to the kids and help develop a really good school climate. And these are important, and you can get any one of these from Anti-Bullying 101. Number 1, teach students how to cooperate even though they disagree. That's the highest form of maturity. And in your manual, you have 12 character qualities that you can use. 50 character qualities that you can use. Maturity is one of them. Help kids to understand that they can disagree, but with the right attitude. See, kids have to cooperate even though they disagree, but we have to give them a voice to disagree, but they got to disagree with the right attitude. And the right attitude means they don't make you feel like an idiot while they're disagreeing with you. Stop the spread of rumors and gossip. And this is a very common problem. We just do it in very professional terms, thinking that it's okay to do it if we're trying to improve the school. Anytime you start a sentence and you're using somebody else's name in that sentence, I will guarantee you're spreading rumors and gossip, and it doesn't help the school climate. And it doesn't matter if it's administration, a parent, a board member, another teacher, a student. Anytime you're involved with that, it does not help the school climate. Spreading rumors, hurts the climate, and it does not morale doesn't do too well when you have people spreading rumors and gossip. But the biggest thing I want to make you aware of is that people talk about morale, but it's not morale in a school, it's trust. Because you never know who's talking about you or who is spreading a rumor or a gossip. Start telling, stop asking. Give directives more than you ask questions. You don't say, would you please sit down? You say, sit down. Become a good listener. There are 5 types of listening. First, you have ignoring, which you don't mean to do. Ignoring. The next one that you have is pretend listening, which is what you do when you're on the phone with somebody and you want to get off and they don't. Then you have selective listening. And selective listening is what you do with a 3-year-old. Where you wait for the blood-curdling scream. If you listen to everything a 3-year-old had to say, you'd go crazy. The 4th one is attentive listening, which is where you're paying attention with your ears and your eyes and your body. But the big one, the big type of listening that we have to practice is empathic listening, where you're listening with your eyes, your ears, your mind, your body, your soul. You can place yourself in that conversation. You can visualize what's going on. And it is one of those things where you can feel the person's pain. And I will tell you right now that victims of bullying need empathic listeners. They need someone to really listen to them. And when a victim comes in and wants to have a conversation with you about bullying, about what's gone on with them, do yourself a favor. Stop everything and really pay attention to what they're saying, because they need you at that point. Don't put yourself in a position where you're not you're not paying attention to this kid, because you don't know what's going on inside that kid's mind, and you want to make sure that you can be there to ease the pain and take that burden from him just a bit. We have to understand that there's 3 types of liars. Okay, you have a liar who is a situational, reactive liar. Then you have, in other words, he's going to lie when it's just as easy to tell the truth. Then you have the con artist who could sell ice to an Eskimo. And this kid is someone who will tell you he's going to bring in his homework in September and you'll still be looking for it in June. Then you have the one that we deal with the most. And the one that we deal with the most is a kid that's called the withholder. This kid will give you 90% of what the truth actually is, but withhold 10% that incriminates him. And this is the type of kid I used to deal with in my office all the time. All the time. And he was really something. But nonetheless, okay, he created a lot of work for me. I had to do a lot of digging and so on to make sure that I got to the bottom of things, because if I didn't, okay, what would happen is I would believe this kid, and the teacher would say to me down the road, maybe at the end of the day, you know what, that's not what happened at all. But the kid sounded so legit and sounded like, this was actually the story. Next one, we have to help kids understand freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not the freedom to say what you want, but it's the wisdom to say what you ought. You can't yell fire in Macy's. Freedom of speech is something that kids have taken to the next level with social media and so on. They have to understand that their words hurt, and they cannot use their words in a negative way to hurt somebody else. It is not the freedom to say what you want, it's the wisdom to say what you ought. That's the important piece that kids need to understand. A few more strategies. And you have an entire manual loaded with diffusing power struggles. I am not going to go through the step-by-step process here. I would encourage you to read the manual. Also, there's a very small manual that I put together that you can purchase. You can also get it in an ebook format by just going to the Bullyproof Classroom Academy website. Or you can even download it right from the app, and I'm going to show you how to get that later on. Use praise effectively. We cannot fall all over kids with praise because it ultimately becomes white noise. And white noise is something that goes in one ear and out the other. So, we have to praise. We have to have one praise a month. And there may be 9 corrections built in there. I would praise a kid once a month for the behavior that he exhibits, and be specific with your praise. Don't just say nice job. Say, you know what? The fact that you keep such an orderly desk has inspired me to do the same with mine. Let him know also, or her know, how their behavior affects you. And what do you do for the rest of the month? You fill in with the 2x10. 2 minutes a day for 10 days straight. You have a conversation with this kid like you would with your best friend. Now, I may have missed that in the respect section, but the 2x10 is a technique where you spend 2 minutes a day, 10 days straight, having a conversation with a kid that you otherwise have difficulty with, like you would with a good friend. And around the 8th day, this kid is going to come to you for the conversation. So you're going to be giving the kid a very powerful and specific comment of praise once a month. And then you're going to practice the 2 by 10. I'm going to share with you, kids, even if you're praising them, if they don't respect you, it doesn't sink in. So that 2 by 10 helps build respect as well. We've covered rules first and compassion and understanding. You have to know and you have to be aware of something here that I want to base the last two. I really want you to understand them completely. Your imprint may tell you, that you have difficulty with confrontations. Maybe it's hard for you to confront somebody. Maybe it's hard for you to tell somebody the truth. So either you don't have the confrontation, or what you do is you have it in a way where you feel like a doormat, where the person ended up overpowering you because you just felt uncomfortable with this confrontation. You have to know how to handle confrontations wisely. And you have to make sure that when you have them, you don't destroy a relationship in the process. You have to be honest. See, because when we have confrontations, when we don't have them with somebody that we need to have a confrontation with, what we're going to do is talk to somebody else about it, and that's what starts the rumors and the gossip. And that's what we have to be aware of. And then we start talking about the person that we have a problem with rather than talking to the person that we actually have the problem with. So that's important. Confrontations are not all bad. Have them with the person you need to have them with. Don't displace the anger and take it out on others or start spreading rumors and gossip about the person. The other one that's there is taking care of yourself. If you've ever read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there's a section there on how to kind of balance your life. And Stephen Covey, the late Stephen Covey, talks about 4 areas, 4 dimensions as he calls them. Physical dimension, mental dimension, emotional dimension, and then the spiritual dimension. Ask yourself what you're doing each day to contribute to each one of those dimensions. Number 1, physical dimension. Are you doing something to keep yourself moving every day? Walking, yoga, calisthenics, some type of interval training, weightlifting, anything. Jump rope for 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Anything. What are you doing? Taking a walk in nature is great. Going out and outside and taking a brisk walk with your spouse or your kids is great. Anything that gets you moving a little bit during the day. Physical dimension. Mental dimension. Once we began to use the internet and television and a lot of other things that are more related to technology, we don't read that much anymore. We read sometimes with our devices, but the bottom line is a lot of people just don't sit and read a book anymore. We should strive to try and read 1 book a month. I need to strive to read 1 book a month. I need to really sit down and enjoy books, because half of the time I'll sit down and I'll get my information right off the internet and I don't have to read the book to find out if it's a how-to book. Social and emotional dimension. Hey, let me explain something to you. I know when I have trouble with somebody who's within my family. You know how I know? I worry about weddings and funerals because I wonder if I'm going to run into somebody there that I haven't spoken to or I've had difficulty with. If, in fact, you have trouble with a member of your family where you don't speak to them, and there are family members that haven't spoken for years, Go and try and straighten it out. Because they're not going to come to you. And if you can get this ironed out, you're going to be far happier, because lots of times this type of thing kind of festers and it starts to leak into other areas of your life, and you're angry about it, you're angry about how you were treated, you're angry about different things, but the bottom line is this: you displace the anger and you'd be better off straightening things out with the person you have trouble with. And it's usually a family member. And the last one that we have is the spiritual dimension. This is a very private area that people have, but whatever it is that gives you peace, whether it be meditation, yoga, walks in nature, meditation and prayer, whatever it is, do it consistently every single day, and realize at times there's just something bigger than you that's controlling this whole thing. And if you begin to spend time in those 4 areas, what you're going to find is that you'll start to develop some peace in your life, which will help contribute to a positive home environment and to a positive school environment. Okay? So that's just some things that you could do, and they're from the late Stephen Covey, in terms of taking care of yourself. Now, for our students, to help them be able to develop the confidence, the wisdom, help them with their own self-acceptance and so on, for kids who are being victimized, I put this piece together that's called Don't Be an Easy Target. And it's something that I am encouraging you to share with your students. Number 1, and this is you speaking to your students right now. Only you know if you're being bullied, because you got a knot in your stomach and you have fear in your heart. The bully does not have to know about that. Only you know. And I've told people there are things that you may know that you'll never tell anybody. There are things that kids know that they'll never tell anybody about. Sometimes we end up dying with information that we've kept hidden in the chambers of our own soul. Learn to say stop, knock it off at a young age. 5 years old. Stop, knock it off. Often when we don't ask people to stop doing something, they believe that it's okay. The bottom line here is this: when you don't ask for someone to stop doing it, they believe that it's okay, and they'll continue doing it. Off-color jokes in the faculty room. People, making passes at other people. The idea that, you speak to people in a disrespectful manner. If you don't ask for them to stop, it will continue, and they're going to believe that in your head you don't mind it. If what you say doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that you failed that time. You haven't gotten there yet. Don't give up. Persist. Make people aware of what they're doing is bothering you. If a bully confronts you, simply state, "You've mistaken me for someone who wants to fight," and walk away. Key line: "You've mistaken me for someone who wants to fight." Now remember, you're explaining this to your students. Walk with your head up and your shoulders back, and walk at a moderate pace between classes. Don't give the impression that you're looking over your shoulder. The next one, I believe, is how you grip your books. Don't hold on to your books tight. Keep your head up. Take a panoramic view of the hallway so you can see the trouble coming. Most people have car accidents. Young people have them because they stare at the hood of the car while they're driving rather than taking a panoramic view of what's going on around them. So be aware of this. Work on this. And don't be afraid of having books knocked out of your hand and so on. Don't clench them like someone's going to do it. Walk with confidence. Your head up, panoramic view, hold your books, in a comfortable way. Listen to your classmates and only respond when you believe it's absolutely necessary. Victims have a bad habit of being socially awkward and making comments that give other people the ammunition to bully them. Like when they disclose information, okay, that they shouldn't disclose about family members, about situations, about likes and dislikes, about who knows what. Don't disclose any information to anyone that you believe they could use to bully you. And know who your friends are. Many years ago, there was a movie out called Bully, where they did a documentary on kids who were bullied in different states. And one of the kids was he was cognitively impaired. Another youngster was she was a lesbian, and you had another one who they did information on the principal. I mean, a whole bunch of stuff. They had to stop the filming of the documentary because the youngster who was cognitively impaired was getting beaten so bad on the bus. And the kid ends up going home and speaking to his father. And his father said to him, "When are you going to understand that these kids are not your friends?" And this child said, "Well, if they're not my friends, then who are?" Understanding friendships is very important for a victim of bullying. And kids who are victimized need to know who their friends are. And they need to know if their friends are motivated to bully them. And kids who are victims need to understand a bully's motives and get a real handle on how to manage his words and actions. Don't try to become the bully's sidekick, because it's not going to stop him from bullying you. Again, this is information you're sharing with a student. Now, parents, there's 3 articles that you can, actually there's 2 articles. Parents can be bullies too, and parents need parenting. Because I want us to understand that kids can intimidate their parents. Now, these articles you're going to find on the website, the Bully-Proof Classroom website, or by going to the app. And then you're going to click on this video. And this video is going to give you the entire rundown on how to deal with angry and irate parents. This will give you the entire rundown on that. And do yourself a favor and do it. Get it done. The next piece that we want to understand here, and this is just a resource for you, this is the Bully-Proof Classroom app. And those of you who understand how to use a QR code, just put your phone over that. If you have a QR code reader, that will bring you right to the app. This is something that you all should have on your phone. It will help you. It's a resource for you. It's free. Do it. People have games and all kinds of other things on their phone that they use. Get this and use this. This will be a huge help to you going forward. And in terms of being able to stop bullying and improve school climate. Please download this app. It's going to help you. Now, my name is Jim Burns, and I do a whole lot of stuff. One of them is a conference on school climate control, which you have right now. But I do the Bully-Proof Classroom. We help you understand how to deal with rumors and gossip. We take topics that no one wants to know anything about, or no one even discusses anymore, and we really put the feet to it and bring it to light. I want us to become more aware of some of the issues that are going on within our schools and in our classrooms, because as I said before, it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. And we want to make sure that we help change the attitude and the behavior of our students going forward, because ultimately they become parents. And once they become parents, they deal with things. They may not deal with things that well because of the fact that they did not get the instruction necessary when they were younger on dealing with, respect, responsibility. What does it look like to do what you're told, when someone asks you to do it, and so on. Sometimes the parents that we deal with are nothing more than folks who've grown up physically but not emotionally. I am here as a resource for you. Please use my email address, go to the websites, download the app. It's a ton of information that I believe you're going to truly, truly enjoy. It has been my pleasure presenting to you and welcoming you into the Bully-Proof Classroom today, and presenting this conference to you on school climate control and how to improve the behavior and attitude of your students and improve the overall climate in your building to create a more respectful and responsible attitude amongst the students. So as we move forward, it's been my pleasure. I certainly hope that I see you guys again and in another conference. Make sure you check your emails for conferences and conference dates. Those of you who can't make conferences, you have this venue right now, which I believe will be extremely helpful to you moving forward. Again, this has been Jim Burns. Okay, I hope that you all are great. We're around Christmas time now. Have a great Christmas. Have a great holiday season, and we will see you soon.